Hi, my name is Jackie Young, and I'm a safety trainer for Comal ISD. And today we wanted to talk about the school bus brake test. As you know, the air brakes are the most important safety feature that you have on your bus, and it's important that you make sure that all the components of the system is working before you leave the yard every morning. It's also important that you fill out your vehicle condition report in the morning before you leave the yard. So if you're ready, we'll get started. The very first thing we want to make sure is that our bus is on a level surface and that the wheels are chalked in the direction that the bus will roll.
Good. All right, the next step would be to start your bus. And you want to make sure that your air pressure is built up to approximately 120. So we're gonna do that right now. We're gonna get our air compressor to kick in so that we can build our pressure up to 120. And we will know when we're at cutout because we'll hear the sound. It will make a whoosh sound. Okay, so the bus cut out. That means we're at 125. You can see that on this gauge right here. And so the first thing that we want to test is our governor and our air compressor. And we always do that with the engine running. So as you're driving your bus, you start at about 125 PSI, and as you use your service brake, you use air out of the system. So as air is depleted, the governor tells the compressor to kick in and begin refilling the tank. It also cuts out when it knows that the tank has enough air in it. So we want to make sure that the governor is working properly and that the air compressor is working properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our foot on the service brake and we're going to press gently a couple of times, and you're going to see your needle begin to go down. And what's going to happen is when I get down to around 90, you're going to see that needle is beginning to rise. That is my cut-in pressure. So my governor and my air compressor are working, and we did cut in at 90 PSI, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write that on my inspection report. The next step is I want to make sure that the governor and the compressor are working properly and that they stop working when the air tanks are completely filled. And I just heard that whooshing noise again. That was my cutout, and we cut out at 125. So my governor and my air compressor are working properly. So the next test is a static test, and we're going to turn our engine off at this point. So static means that nothing is happening to the system. That means that we're not braking. We don't have our foot on the service brake while we're doing this test. So the very first static test, the engine is off and the parking brake is still engaged. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my pressure, my PSI, and it is 125. So my starting pressure for this test is 125. I'm going to wait 1 minute, and I should not lose more than 2 PSI in that 1 minute. If I did lose more than 2 PSI, that would mean that I have a leak in my system. I have a static leak. So it has been 1 minute and I have not lost any PSI. You can see on my gauge right here. So I'm going to enter my ending pressure is 125. All right, my second static test, my bus is still off, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to release my parking brake. And remember, my wheels are chalked, so my bus will not roll. So I'm going to go ahead and release my parking brake. And you can see that when I did that, I did lose some pressure. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to indicate my beginning pressure. It's approximately 115. I'm going to enter 115 on my vehicle condition report, and I'm going to wait 1 minute, and I should not lose more than 2 psi in 1 minute. We're checking the system for leaks with our parking brake disengaged. So it has been 1 minute and I have not lost any psi, so I'm going to enter my ending reading, which is 115. Okay, the next test is our applied brake test, and it's easy to remember what that means. That means that we're going to apply our foot to the service brake. We're going to put a good amount of pressure on it. And you can see that I did lose a little bit more pressure. I'm at about 107. So I'm going to enter my beginning reading is 107. I'm going to wait 1 minute. And during this test, I should not lose more than 3 psi in 1 minute. And we're still testing our system for leaks. This time we're just testing our system for leaks while we're braking. So it has been 1 minute, and you can see by the gauge that we have not lost any psi. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to enter my ending reading. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to test my my low pressure warning device. So as we're driving our bus down the road, our governor, like I said, and our air compressor keep our PSI range between about 90 and 120. If we were to develop a leak in the system while we're driving, our low pressure warning device notifies us that our system is losing pressure, and so our warning device is really important. So in order to test that, what we're going to do is we're going to remove air from the system, and you can see our starting point is right here. We're at 107. Okay, so I'm going to remove air from the system by pumping the service brake. You can see the air is reducing, and my low pressure warning device will be a light and a buzzer. And it should activate somewhere between 60 and 80 psi. And you can see that it did just activate, and I'm right at about, let's see, that's 75. I'm going to go with about 65 psi. So our low pressure warning device is working. Put one more pump so it stays on. There you go. So our low pressure warning device is working. Now, what would happen is if we were driving down the road and our system began to lose pressure, our warning device would come on while we're driving, and it would give us time to pull over and stop the bus. Because what's going to happen is once all of the air is out of the system, your spring brake is going to activate, and that's going to stop the bus in its tracks wherever you may be. So this gives you an opportunity to get off of the road to a safe spot. So we do need to test that component though of our spring brake, and to do that what we're going to do is we're going to continue removing air from the system. You can see I'm pumping the service brake, the needle's going down even further, and when we get to about between 20 and 40 psi, our spring brake is going to activate. There we go. It activated at approximately 25 psi, and when that button popped out, I know that my spring brake activated. So now I know that my system doesn't have any leaks. I know that if I do develop a leak while I'm driving, my low pressure warning device is going to let me know that. And I also know that if I have a total loss of air pressure, my spring brake is going to activate and it's going to stop the bus. So that is good. All right, the next step is I'm going to restart my bus. And I'm going to let it build up a little bit of pressure to silence that low pressure device. Okay, I'm going to remove my wheel chock. And then what I want to test next is the holding power of my parking brake. So I know that my parking brake is engaged. We heard that that pop out a minute ago, so we're good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the bus in drive. I'm going to leave my parking brake engaged, and I'm going to accelerate to approximately 1200 RPM, and the bus should not move. And there's 1200, and we are good. Okay, so we need our parking brake when we're loading and unloading students. The bus needs to be stable so that the children are safe. We also use it when we're parked, and sometimes we might need it in an emergency. So we need to know that that is working. So we are good. So I'm going to go ahead and indicate on my vehicle condition report that my parking brake is working. And the very last test is to actually test the service brake. And you would do this in the bus yard before you ever left. As you're going about 5 miles an hour, you're going to make sure that your service brake will stop the bus and there's not excessive pulling to the right or to the left. And we're going to do this 2 times in the yard before we leave. And it is a good idea to take a look behind you and make sure there's not another bus right behind you when you do that. And I'm going to indicate on my vehicle condition report that I have tested the service brake. So once I have done all of that, I know that all of the different components of my braking system are working, and we are ready to roll.